Welcome, everyone. Shari and I have reunited once again
Yay!
to talk about Job. How about that?
Surprise.
We are going to be going through the images of William Blake in the book of Job. So we have this book. There's some commentary in it, but we're going to basically just talk through the images and and see what Blake has to say, and this all has to do with kind of like our previous exploration of the book of Job, and we're just continuing on. I'm not super familiar with Blake. I know a little bit about him and some of his work. I think Shari, you're more familiar than
But
I am. But
limited.
part of this is that we're just going to come to the images as well a little bit, as for the first time, sort of. I mean, we've looked at them before, but just our own reflections. And so I hope this is valuable for some people. It'll be fun for me going through this. So, you have anything you want to say as we start?
Well, I just want to say that if anybody thinks that there's a bottom to the book of Job, this is just going to open a whole new can of worms.
The bottomless pit.
Yeah.
The bottomless can of worms.
Yeah. And that's because of blank, blank. I'm not going to say. It's a mystery.
It's
It's
a
kind
mystery.
of like, and this is like Agatha Christie. You just gotta, you just gotta keep following the clues, and you just get
right.
deeper and deeper down.
Okay, I'm going to share something. All right. So I just want to just start off just showing like what these images look like. So Blake did these prints. I believe they're like they're done with a printmaking process. So they're carved or etched, and then he printed them, and then he also added this outside border part. So there's like this main picture that he does, and then also this sort of ink work that he does on the outside, and all of them look somewhat similar to this. Oh, I'm sharing the wrong. I need to share a different window. So here's this one, and then like here's an example of another one, plate 2. Zoom in.
Yeah.
You see there's kind of some variation between them, but this is what Blake did and what we're going to talk through. And how many images are there? There's 21 total.
Mm-hmm.
And so 21 for the whole book of Job. And he does his own interpretation in the images. So there's some stuff that's not quite literal, some stuff that he imagines is a part that makes sense to be a part, but he's not holding strictly to a literal image for image, chapter for chapter, or something like that. He's definitely doing exploration, imagination, these kind of things.
Well, he's I would say this is okay, maybe I'll just back up a little bit because Jesus is the imagination for William Blake. And so all of the language, like the literal language that we are reading in the scripture, is symbolic to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was reading in the author's introduction that this is one of the first wordless, or it was kind of a grand project in the sense that he didn't use words necessarily because he did write a lot. He wrote poetry, wrote Jerusalem, which is a huge, thing, Marriage of Heaven and Hell, which he references here, which would be probably a good idea to read. It's not very long, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I intuit, because I'm just leaning heavily on that, that what Blake is doing is, instead of using words, which he could do because he was very good at using words, he's using images to tell the story. So, and I might argue that the images are literal in the sense that they are the symbolic representations of the words.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I mean, I just reading through this yesterday, I was like, oh, now I get it about a few things
Mm-hmm.
from the images and the way that Blake in other writings talks about these things. So, you know how Martin Shaw said, and also George MacDonald, we need to realize that we're living in a dream world, in a dream. When you say that to people, I find they often think, oh, it's not real, right? But if you think about what someone like George MacDonald and Martin Shaw, they're not going to ask you to live in a world that isn't real. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to ask you to live in a world our original language. And our original language is imagistic. That's why we dream. We don't read books. We don't have ones and zeros when we close our eyes. We don't have words going through our minds. We have images and stories because that's how we understand the world. And that's why we can be manipulated with narratives and propaganda. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, all you have to do to convince people of stuff is like, believe me, I swore to God that I saw a jackalope because of an image. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what they mean when they we have to realize we're living in a dream. We are living in it. All around us is language, and so I think it's really, uh, you know, I'm excited about going through these illustrations because I think they're going to open up more understanding because we get, a picture is worth what? 1,000 words, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, and his illustrations are very his whole style is very dreamlike. All of his work, and like you said, he believed the imagination was something that was
Jesus.
it was Jesus, so it could be relied upon, and it was holy, and it was also something that was revealing of who God was or is.
Right. And like I think Barfield said, it's a truth bearing faculty. It's our truth bearing
Yeah.
faculty.
Yep. Okay. Let me start out by reading. I'll hide this for right now. I'm just going to start by reading like the first couple few paragraphs here in the introduction of this book. It's Blake's Job by S. Foster Damon. So he says, the book of Job was one of the greatest books ever written. Here it is interpreted by one of the greatest illustrators. William Blake was exceedingly precise when he illustrated. He studied the text so carefully that he found significance even in such matters as emphasis. He knew why the Lord ended his address with such elaborate accounts of Behemoth and Leviathan, and why the book ends with particular note of Job's 3 daughters. Blake also added details to indicate his own explanations. Therefore, one must read his pictures, symbol by symbol, to discover those ideas. Blake himself wrote, I entreat then that the spectre will attend to the hands and feet, to the lineaments and to the countenances. They are all descriptive of character, and are not a, and not a line is drawn without intention, and that most discriminate and particular. As poetry admits not a letter that is insignificant, So painting admits not a grain of sand or a blade of grass insignificant, much less an insightful blur or mark. And this is from A Vision of the Last Judgment, Keynes, page 611. Furthermore, Blake warns us in the inscriptions on his very first illustration that his pictures are not to be understood literally. The letter killeth, the spirit giveth life. 2 Corinthians 3:6. They must be spiritually discerned. Job's sons are not killed in the flesh, they are dead only to their father, and they reappear at the end. The devil who destroys them is not an independent angel, but the accuser in Job's own brain. The boils which infect him are not mere skin disease, but a disease of his own soul. In fact, the whole drama is enacted in Job's soul. His wife is part of him, his inspiration, his feminine aspect, which Blake elsewhere calls an emanation, who shares his errors. His children are his creations, his deeds, his joys. The accusing friends are also part of him as they speak for his submerged sense of guilt. His devil is the accuser within him, and even his God is his own creation, his own ideal, made in his image, his selfhood, and not the true God at all. The nature, well, let me just stop right here and just say that this is definitely his interpretation of what Blake is doing. There's a way in which he's so like when he says that the devil here will this line the devil who destroys them is not an independent angel but an accuser in Job's own brain. So in that image there is part of the image that alludes to that, but for Blake this is not like, it doesn't mean what's happening is a psychological drama happening within the confines of the psychology of a man. It is that, but that for Blake is the most real, and it is actually a representation of how reality is. Would that be fair to
Yeah.
say?
Well, I would put it this way. I would say that uh, on earth as it is in heaven. And you could think of earth as body and heaven as mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? So everything that you're living out is also happening here. It's also happening up here. It's happening down there. Like it's a fractal pattern that where this is why the early fathers talked about the different readings of the scriptures. For example, there's a literal reading. There's an analogical reading, allegorical, and then I can't remember them all. And
Historic.
they're all valid.
Mm-hmm.
They're all valid readings because they're all true. Because
Yeah,
these things are, how could I put this? I know I'm not making a lot of sense, but Meister Eckhart says that if we were making a spiritual journey, it would only be a quarter of an inch long, but many miles deep.
mm-hmm.
So this is how spiritual truth is. It's not linear. So you can't say if you ask was Job real, you're already on the wrong, you're asking the wrong question.
Mm-hmm.
It's assumed that he was real because here's the story of a man, right? And we all recognize his story. We all know that people have these stories, right? I mean, Job's is extreme, but there's nothing unusual. Like he's not encountering things in his life that don't fit together. Like he's not having conversations with brontosauruses or anything, right? So yeah, Job is real, but everything else below that is also real, and of course, I would say it all depends on what you mean by real.
Yeah, and it, like you said, like it's all fractal. So what happens within the person is also a
It's happening
representation of
to
what
them,
happens in reality, like
right?
outside the person, where
Right.
we would call reality. But it's all reflective of the same exact pattern. And so
Yes.
when Blake does his illustration, he's doing that with that in mind.
You know what? Maybe I should read something here. It's a quote by Goethe that I really love.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really helps to illustrate just exactly what we're talking about right now. So it says here, the basic quality of the living unity is to divide itself, to unite itself, to flow into the general, to remain in the specific. So it flows into the general, it remains in the specific, to transform itself, to specify itself, and like the living, may make itself obvious under 1,000 different circumstances, to break forth and to vanish, to solidify and to melt, to freeze and to flow, to expand and to contract, since all of these effects occur in the same time moment simultaneously. And this is like, don't let this sound like word salad. It makes total sense. Like, just hang in there. It all occurs in the same time moment simultaneously. All and everything can happen at the same time. And here's the kicker, okay? And I think this is what really pushes the point home that we're making here. Arising and expiring, creating and destroying in the same sense, in the same way. Therefore, the specific, which in this case is Job's life, which is occurring, so it's true, okay? It's happening, appears always as a picture and an analogy of the general.
Mm-hmm.
So if you speak from a place of integrity within you, and I think a lot of people know this because we've all hopefully had that experience where we're in dialogue with somebody or a group of people and we speak of something that is very deeply personal, it moves everyone, and it's for that reason. The
Mm-hmm.
specific is always a picture and an analogy of the general. And it's
Mm-hmm.
because of the nature of reality.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why poetry works. A poet sits down and he digs down deep into himself, and he pulls up this picture that he sees, and it speaks to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think what Blake is doing with Job's story is valid and good and true.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make
Oh,
that.
that's good. That's very good. Um, I kind of want to just show this now, which the author is this. Do you know if this table is from Blake or is this the author's um,
I don't know.
construction?
I think it looks like his construction.
There is some stuff
Or it might
that,
be referred, like, does he have footnotes? I didn't even check.
yeah. So we see on the far left side the illustration numbers, so 1 through 22, and they're broken up into three cycles, and then these states. So the next third column is innocence to experience to revolution to the dark night to the new life. And then you see on the very far right there's a contrary, meaning there's an illustration that pairs nicely with whichever one it is. So illustration 1 actually pairs with illustration 21.
Mm.
And illustration 2 pairs with illustration 16. And then there's a little description there. And I never understood the I. I don't know necessarily want to talk about it right at this moment. We'll probably come back to this.
Sure.
But he does mention in here the I is what is how the image is being viewed through or something. Let me just read this little short bit here. Practically, they represent the whole course of human thought in its search for an ideal by which to live. In a system that Blake developed in his epics, the eyes, capital EYES, the eyes or angels from the path of experience. They stand for a sequence of states established by the divine mercy so that has fallen man, if he persist, shall find his way back to eternity and the true God. Just as each period of life has its own errors, and one matures by growing out of one period into another, each state represents a stage in the overcoming of an error. To be an error and to be cast out is part of God's design.
Mm.
Thus, the seven angels have, and that's a quote from Blake, to be an error and to be cast out is part of God's design. Thus, the seven angels, he's talking about the seven angels in the very first. The seven angels have innocent faces and some bear scrolls. Um,
He talks about scrolls, and I thought that was really interesting,
and
actually.
those seven angels correspond with the seven. There's seven eyes, and the seven eyes are Lucifer or selfhood, Molech, the executioner, Elohim, the judge, Shaddai, the accuser, Pahad, terror, Jehovah, law, Jesus, redemption, and then they kind of go in reverse, sort of reverse order. Then it goes Jehovah, Jesus, Pahad, Shaddai, Elohim, Molech, Lucifer towards the end. But this is, for me, this is, I don't know what it means. Like, I get the idea of moving from one thing to another. Um,
Mhm.
and, but I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, so many of them. It's just, I don't even know where to start. I,
Okay.
I wanted to say something about the scrolls. He says here, the scrolls, the books. So
Mm-hmm.
there's the law and then the scrolls, and I think that's that first illustration, right? Of the angels.
Yeah. Let me,
Maybe bring that up.
I have to bring up a picture of that. I don't have, let me find it real fast. I'll have to find it online. But if you want to talk
Yeah.
about it while
Anyway,
I look.
it says I don't think they have scrolls in their hands here. I think they have scrolls, and it doesn't look to me like they're holding anything in that in the very beginning. But anyway, the scrolls represent the instinctive life. They are, and this was really profound. They are Job's good deeds, which he has never considered of value, but which the angels offer to God in Job's defense. Wow. So
Yeah, yeah.
what I thought was what came to my mind actually was C.S. Lewis's Prophet of Tash, where the prophet of Tash wants to go into, or goes into Narnia. This is paradise now, right at the end, the last battle, and he thinks he's not going to be admitted because he wasn't, of Aslan. He was of Tash, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Aslan says to him, um, because the prophet of Tash says, "Well, are you and Tash one? Like, are you the same thing?"
Right.
And Blake's going to contend with that in these illustrations too, right? And Aslan growls and says, "No, not because we are one, but because we are opposites," which is something that you'll see running through all of Blake's work. That's why the marriage of heaven and hell is really important, because it's a reconciliation of opposites, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not because we are one, but because we are opposites. I take to me the services which thou hast done to him. For I and he are of such different kind that no service which is vile can be done to me. This is Aslan. And none which is not vile can be done to him. Therefore, if any man swear by Tash and keep his oath for the oath's sake, it is by me that he has truly sworn. Okay? Though he know it not. And it is I who reward him. And if any man do a cruelty in my name, then he says that, though he says the name of Aslan, it is Tash whom he serves, and by Tash his deed is accepted.
Mm.
Do you understand, child?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what came to my mind there, because it's the good deeds that Job never considered of value, but which the angels offer to God in Job's defense.
Yeah, that's very good.
Right?
Yeah, and here's the image, and you can see the scrolls that some of them bear.
Oh, there they have them. Okay, I just couldn't see them. This tiny picture. And then there's one more thing I wanted to read out of Rilke about
Well,
the.
and this brings to mind this kind of profound idea that there's the righteousness that Job, or what Blake's saying is the righteousness that Job has, Blake or Job isn't aware of. And we'll see this in the
He's
images because
undervalued. I think you could go so far as to say he's actually undervaluing. This is his problem,
mhm,
right? And I don't want to give it away, but like we'll get into it. I think if we read more
yeah,
of the
we'll totally get into it.
but I just wanted to read a quick thing here. This is from Rilke. Rilke tells in this poem from Duino Elegies. He he says, "Praise this world to the angel, not the unsayable one." So not the one that you can't describe, like which is what theology is or philosophy or it's everybody trying to say something that they don't know how to say.
Hmm.
You can't oppress the angel with glorious emotion in the universe where he feels more powerfully. You are a novice. So show him something simple which formed over generations, lives as our own, near our hand and within our gaze. Tell him of things. And this is a capital T. Tell him of things, right? He will stand astonished as you stood by the rope maker in Rome or the potter along the Nile. Show him how happy a thing can be, how innocent and ours, how even lamenting grief purely decides to take form, serves as a thing, or dies into a thing, and blissfully escapes far beyond the violin. So, and then he goes on to say, Earth, isn't that what you want? To arise within us, invisible. So what Rilke's talking about there is the earth wants to be made manifest in us, right? Through language. And so he says, tell the angel about your joy, right? The joy that you have. Show him a thing. And this is what parents do with their children. When they come home from school, they say, "How was your day?" And they want to hear about things.
Hmm.
Mostly the kids go, "It was okay." They don't want to
Hmm.
talk. Or show me your toy, or show me your drawing. Tell me about the thing,
Show me what
right?
you made in art class.
Yeah, because whatever comes out of them is them
Hmm.
speaking. And so this is what Job undervalues, I think, in according to Blake, right?
Yeah.
And it's exactly that the angels defend him with. But look, he
Oops.
was amazed by this, or he loved that. He doesn't know it, but he
Hmm.
did, right?
Hmm.
So anyway,
No, that's very good. So let's go to the first image. Um, so here we have, it's clearly a picture of, I'll zoom in on this middle part.
hmm
It's an image of, there's Job and his wife and his 10 children. His three daughters are present here right beside him and his wife. And the children, the boys are gathered around. We've got the sheep and the sheepdog kind of lazily dozing. Um, Notice there's these musical instruments that are in the tree. And the important thing to sort of think about those is they're not being used. They're there and they're not used. And then on their lap is on Job and his wife's lap are the books of the law. In the background, you have a sort of like a cathedral type temple. Behind that is the sun. They kind of both have rays coming off of them, but the sun is setting. So the sun is going down. And on the other side, you have the homes of, looks like probably the family. the boys, sheep are going off in the distance, showing like that's all sheep back there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this large stone mountain, and the sun and the or no, it's not the morning star, it's the evening star, but the moon rising up as the sun is setting. I'm going to read the text that accommodate or accompanies the illustration here in the book. It says, illustration 1, thus Job did continually. Job was the greatest of all men of the East. He was enormously wealthy and consequentially enormously powerful. Whenever he appeared in public, he created a sensation. In his council, the princes and nobles were silent while they drank in his speeches, and his was the last word. After his ruin, he recalled bitterly this time of his glory in Job 29, 7 through 25. His private life was strict. He had risen to his high estate by conscientiousness, hard work, justice, and sobriety. He denied himself all unnecessary pleasures. He had not earned his wealth by dissipation, yet he prided himself on his extensive charities. He had married a wife who adored him and had raised a fine family of 7 sons and 3 daughters. But above all, Job was pious. He ran his life according to the books of law. His reward was his wealth, which he believed he had obtained through the favor of his God, who pronounced him perfect. Consequently, he could not help secretly thinking very well of himself. In the illustration, Job and his family sit in this pastoral state of innocence. They are shown at their evening prayers. The moment is sacred, therefore all the family's musical instruments are silenced, beginning with Job's own harp and his wife's lute, although the 2 youngest boys have clung to their pipe and lyre over on the right side. Mm. The instruments are those of spontaneous praise, but Job's prayers are being read from books written by others while the children kneel humbly. Job basically is a good man, although he never recognized the true God. Therefore, on his right is his spiritual wealth, a Gothic church, and on his left, his material wealth, the flocks and barns. Okay, those are barns back there then. But the sun is setting. Job's errors are these. He fears God instead of loving him as a friend. He eschews evil, thus condemning half of life, and he relies on the letter that killeth, and thus has closed himself to spiritual discernment. Deepest of all is his secret pride, which must be humbled. Mm-hmm. I don't like any of that last part, but that's what it says in the book.
You don't like it?
I don't think this has been my thing since the beginning. I think to accuse Job of pride then gives a reason why the disasters happen. And there is, like, Job gets a greater revelation of God through the book, but compare the beginning to the end. He has a greater revelation at the end, but it's not due to any sin. And so the author of this, and I don't necessarily think that this is Blake's understanding of it too. Like, I really think that Job is blameless and upright and the greatest of all men.
Okay, well, let me steel man Blake. Mm-hmm. The star man him.
Well, what I just read is from the author, and it's not necessarily from Blake.
Yeah, but he goes on, like in the introduction. Mm-hmm. This is what I thought was really interesting. So, also in my side notes here, for Blake, like that table that you showed. The table that you showed, mm-hmm. and all of because it's a table of all of the illustrations, right?
Yeah.
That is an evolution of consciousness.
Yeah.
That's what that is. Okay. Innocence, experience, revolution. So you can think of childhood, mm-hmm. right?
Yep.
Your teen years, midlife crisis, and then older age, the new life, mm-hmm. right? When everything is made new. Right, when you can look back on your life and say, "Oh, oh, now I know. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, this,
Mm-hmm.
and then all these, here we have selfhood, executioner, judge, accuser, terror, and law. Those are, for him in the story, he's illustrating them as psychological, right?
Mm-hmm.
Names. And so this is what you kind of have to get through, right? In your
Mm-hmm.
innocence, you're possessed with selfhood and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So and then the thing that I read earlier, these are Job's good deeds which he never considered of value, but which the angels offer to God in his defense. This is again the prophet
Where
of Tash.
where did you read that from? Is that in the book?
Yeah, page 4 in the introduction.
Okay. That's awesome. I don't remember that part. That's great.
And that again, I would just point to the prophet of Tash. The prophet of Tash thinks he's not going to Narnia
Mm-hmm.
because it matters to him whose side he's on. But Aslan reminds him that whatever good he did for the world was done unto him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I found it really interesting that Job's pride was a pride of innocence. Okay? So
Yeah, it
you
would have
talked
to
about
be.
this.
Yeah.
Yes, you talked about this in the Job series that we did as the sinless fall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So and we do know that there is a repentance. So I don't and I can actually back it up with facts and logic here. I don't think that the author or Blake are accusing Job of having actually sinned. It's an innocent sin.
Yeah.
It's a sin of immaturity. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So like when you look at this picture, this illustration, the first impression that I have ever had looking at that is they they are posturing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Why? Because they are in a posture. They're in a posture of piety.
Yep.
So they are doing something that they do not understand, but they think is right, and that is innocence. Okay, so the on page 7 of the introduction, he says, "This is the author of the book, not Blake. The book of Job was written to attack the vulgar error that misfortunes are punishment for sin. Such is the contention of Job's friends, and for this idea the Lord denounces them.
Mm-hmm.
But how then account for Job's suffering? Why should that quote unquote perfect man so suddenly be plunged from the height of fortune to the depth, and for no fault of his own? The answer, as commonly understood, is that there was an arrangement between God and his servant Satan to test Job's fidelity, an arrangement made quite independently of Job himself. Such an interpretation was to Blake unsatisfactory. Who was this Satan who introduced doubt and guilt into Job's heaven? He was the Diabolos, the accuser of sin. So, you know how everybody wants to say Job did something wrong?
Mm-hmm.
That's what Blake hated
Yeah, I
more than
hate that too.
anything. Right. And me too. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he's saying that Job's prime error was admitting this accuser into his heaven, and from this Satan all the disasters proceed. Only a false God would have ever listened to him. Once these points are settled, everything becomes clear. Job's disasters are not punitive, but educational.
Mm-hmm.
They rouse Job from his complacent submissiveness to tradition and start him on his search for the true God.
Mm-hmm.
So it's developmental psychologically. It's educational. If you think of it from a childhood perspective,
Mm-hmm.
which is what innocence is. So this first picture is childhood.
Yep.
It's innocence. It's posturing.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking on something that you do not understand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And everything else after that, and I mean, I don't know. I can say for myself that, waking up from childhood was a rude awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It was disastrous, just like it was for Job,
Mm-hmm.
right? He woke up from his innocence to devastation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we feel when we wake up from our innocence, right?
Yep, I
Like, you
agree.
know what I thought of, Jess? Job.
Huh. You can just call me Job.
Rebaptize you.
I know.
You know what I thought of? I thought of how he he made sacrifice for his sons because they were partying in their houses,
Mm-hmm.
just to make sure, right, that they all his bases, all their bases, his bases, everything was covered.
Yeah.
And just reading this brief introduction and hearing how Blake is approaching it, I was like, oh yeah, that is something that you would do as a child. You would perform a ritual to ensure, right? Because we talked about this before, how it's cause and effect. It's a basic cause and effect perception of the world and God. So you would do something to, you would perform a ritual to ensure that nothing bad happens, right?
Yep.
But you don't know anything. You don't know why you're doing it. So anyway, I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm making a good case, but
No,
I'm,
I no, that's all very good. I just want to go around the outside of this. So at the very top, in like these clouds, and the clouds have a significance, which we'll we'll just continually explore this, but I'll just mention it for now. And it says, "Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." So, and then at the very bottom, we have the altar with Job's sacrifice that he made for his children. And then in the smoke, it says, "Thus Job did continually." And the smoke kind of frames the the etching. And then down here, we have the first verses of the book of Job. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one who feared God and eschewed evil. And there was born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters. And then in the middle on the altar, it says, "The letter killeth, the spirit giveth life. It is spiritually discerned." So I think well, anything, I think there's
I
a
would
lot to
say,
say. Like, I'm looking at Job's face, first of all. I'm looking at Job's wife is looking at him with her head sort of bowed. She, all throughout, she's very much like a part of Job and beside him the whole time. And we even see Job sort of looking up, either towards the instruments or up towards something. So even though most of his children have their head bowed, his wife has his head bowed, he still has this sort of posture. He's looking up, which I find interesting because it's almost like he's looking up towards something more than this sort of perfection that of blamelessness and righteousness, right?
well, he's oriented towards God. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
obvious. His whole life is oriented towards God, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know how he says, I'm just thinking of Joni Mitchell's lyrics to her song, "You tireless watcher
Mm-hmm.
to God." You know, I don't know. Joni Mitchell's lyrics are coming to my mind. "What have I done to you?"
Yeah.
Right? "Oh, you tireless watcher, what have I done to you?"
Mm-hmm.
That's how Job feels. He talks about that in the book of Job, right? Job says, why are you following me around? Or, do you think you have to keep an eye on me?
Yeah.
Like, am I like this? Am I, so Job is like, you could also, knowing that, you could also look at that picture and think, he's afraid. And that is
Sure.
what the author says in here as well. Where did I see that now? Job's God, and he draws from Jerusalem actually because he talks about the emanations and stuff like that, but that's really complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where did I see that now? Job's God is a God of fear. I don't remember where I read it. I didn't underline it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he could be looking up in sort of in fear.
Well, I mean, it all depends on how you're perceiving it. He could
Yeah.
also, but he's definitely oriented up,
Yep.
right? So everyone, some of the kids are looking at him, some of them are looking at the book. The wife is looking
Mm-hmm.
kind of like weirdly off into the distance. Um, but Job is only aware of one thing, and that's God. He doesn't seem to be aware of his family, in a way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's interesting looking where the gazes of all the characters are looking. Like you said, the
Mm,
daughters seem to be looking right at the books.
yeah,
These boys seem to be looking at their father, or possibly across the way. This boy is the only one looking up above. He might be looking at the instruments in the tree. Um, this one's looking down towards the ground, possibly the dog
hmm,
that's lazily sleeping with the sheep. I think this whole part of the sheep and the dog sleeping kind of indicate how peaceful, but also how, but
asleep,
they're also asleep. It's peaceful, but
asleep.
they're asleep.
Yeah,
And then these guys looks like they're looking at their parents.
right. And this in the sun setting on the Gothic church in the background.
Hmm.
It's the end of a religious era,
It's the
right?
end of this, yeah. And
Of
we'll,
this religious wealth that he's experiencing, like, which is also his real wealth is wrapped up in,
hmm.
and the dark night is coming, right?
Yep. And it's characterized by this sort of dark mountain stone rock as
I find
opposed
it
to
really,
the detail or ornamented cathedral.
I found it really interesting that for Blake, the instruments were hung up in these orchestrated, and that's not a pun. I'm trying to tie them together. Orchestrated moment of piety, right?
Yeah.
Um, and there is no I think he mentions it in the introduction. There's no spontaneity.
Right.
He, he did say something about perhaps that's why the two boys still have
Yeah.
their
So
instruments by
one
their
has the
side.
lyre over here, one has the lute right here, kind of
Yeah,
tucked a little bit hidden.
yeah, because they might be young enough that they still have that tendency to be more spontaneous, but
Hmm.
everybody is like, no, we're no spontaneity here. We're following the rules,
Yep.
right?
The
We
hand
have the
poses, the book.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, no line is drawn without intent in this. So it's just interesting to me that those instruments hang over their heads. It's like, when you have something bothering you, you say it's hanging over your head.
Hmm.
That's what those instruments are doing to me.
Yeah, and it's also the tree. It's the it's the tree of life, but they're not taking part in it.
But they could be leaned up at the bottom somewhere.
Yeah,
But
that's
they're
how they are.
literally hanging over their heads.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that's great.
Okay, let's go to image two.
Hmm.
All right. So one thing I noticed is all of a sudden we're in this vertical orientation.
Mhm.
Like the previous this image is horizontal within on the page, and this one is vertical on the page. So that and
Layered.
I think that's on purpose because we move from the scene on the earth to a scene that includes earth and heaven.
Right. And
So
it
yeah.
and it, a lot of those Blake images are like layers, which should
Mm-hmm.
also, I think, indicate something of what we talked about before with the literal meaning, the allegorical meaning. It's a layered, fractal understanding of
Mm-hmm.
things. This is what he would have called spiritual discernment, which is what he said you have to have in order to understand any of his illustrations.
So do you want to read the paragraph?
From the second illustration,
Yeah.
okay. I just wanted to say that at the first illustration there at the bottom, the author has cycle first,
Mm-hmm.
state in I, Lucifer, and then there's a contrary illustration, which I thought was interesting, Jess, because it means that the illustrations themselves also have a chiastic structure, like the Book of Job,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. When the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were about me. Job's inner life is now opened for us. His God is Job's own ideal, and therefore bears Job's likeness. Interesting.
Yeah. So God up here looks like Job. You see.
This God reigns supreme with the book of law open in his lap. Being Job's own ideal, he can claim that Job is quote unquote perfect. But Job is too conscientious to accept this claim complacently and uncritically. Law implies judgment, and this judgment by Job's God raises a question. At once, Satan the accuser appears before the Lord. Job himself. I'm trying to find it in the illustration. Anyway,
Oh, Satan is this guy looks like he's running on fire. This
yeah.
is Satan appearing.
Satan the accuser. Job himself, for this takes place within his own brain, as indicated by the cloud barriers which separate worlds.
Yeah, so
Is
that's that this cloud, and you see like it comes under here. It's behind the characters, but this
it,
cloud sort of
right
envelops all that's in the
in that
brain, the mind.
right. So now the accuser shows up before the Lord, and Job is questioning his own piety. May it not be merely gratitude for his material prosperity? Surely he has eschewed evil, but real virtue is positive, not negative. His Pharisaic pride in his own perfection has admitted into his heaven the accuser who is casting doubt on that perfection. Doth Job fear God for naught? Job 1:9. The two dim faces beneath the arms of Satan are the shadowy error of Job and his wife. Until that error is given definite form, it cannot be recognized and cast out. To answer Satan, angels cast before the throne the scrolls of Job's spontaneous good deeds. Only one angel has a book, and that is partly closed. But the Almighty has no scroll, for he does not consider such trifles. This is Job not valuing his good deeds, right? Or remember, I read that in the
Yeah.
beginning. Um, Yet on earth, angels minister to Job with scrolls of song, although Job himself holds upright the book of the law on his left knee. His wife and all but one of their children also hold books, for Job has tried to bring up his children properly. He knows the dangers that threaten the children of the rich. Quote, they spend their days in wealth and in a moment go down to the grave. Therefore they say unto God, depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. Job 21:13-14. Job knows that his own children feast every night. Consequently, in the morning he sacrifices for them. Quote, it may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Job 1:4-5. But he does not want to know definitely how they are acting. Oh, how they are really acting. Therefore, he turns his back on his eldest son, who already has abandoned his book for a scroll. And those are your instinctive.
Yeah, so it's this guy right here. He's got a scroll. Yeah.
He sits with his mistress. None of the sons are married, and their baby. He is living his life according to his own instincts. This is the natural reaction of children against the perfection of a stern father. The margins develop the idea of the illustration. Below are Job and his wife, still in the pastoral state of innocence, but in the living Gothic decorations are the peacock of pride and the parrot of vain repetition. Oh, that's so good. Angels weep over the pillars of cloud and flame that led the Israelites through the wilderness to Mount Sinai, where the Ten Commandments were revealed. After Satan's title is written in Hebrew, his identification as King Jehovah. This is going to scandalize people, but it's really starting to make a lot of sense to me, actually, weirdly. I don't know if I would have been ready for this like 2 years ago or something, but
I don't know if I'm ready for it right now. The
yeah, you just have to keep in mind that Blake was unsatisfied with accusing Job of sin.
Yep.
This is a state of innocence. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the state of innocence is Lucifer, according to the table that you showed, which is selfhood, which is what innocent children are.
Yeah.
Completely focused on themselves.
And perfectly normal and perfectly good.
Right. And you know what? Oh, here's a little thing that keeps popping into my head and has been for a long time. When I don't remember where it is, maybe you do, where Jesus says, "I see Satan fall like lightning." Is it after the transfiguration, before the transfiguration, or before the crucifixion? When is that?
It's before the crucifixion. I don't know when in relationship with the transfiguration is, but
it's interesting because
it was
I
when he
thought,
sent out the disciples to go preach and heal in his name. And then when they come back, he says, I saw Satan fall like lightning.
right. Oh, okay. Well, think about that in the context of Blake. I see Satan, selfhood, fall like lightning. Right? So it suddenly, because that's interesting that it's when they go out to preach and heal, because that would be a moment of, emptying out of selfhood, right? So anyway, I've thought about that statement for a long time because it feels psychological to me. I know it's probably also spiritual and like in a
Yeah,
spiritual realm,
it's all the same.
but it's all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, anyway, I don't have much more to say about it than that.
Well, let me go through this sort of bit by bit. Just here at the top, it says, I beheld the Ancient of Days. And then it says, hast thou considered my servant Job? Then on the left side, it says, we shall all awake up,
We shall
and
awake.
I shall see God in the cloud. And then on the right side, it says, thou art our Father. I think this goes together. We shall all awake up in thy likeness,
Likeness.
or likeness, Lincolnel. I was like, what is that? Because it looks like a likeness.
We'll all wake up in lentils?
Lentils? Yeah. I was like, we shall all awake up in thy likeness.
That's
okay.
from Psalm 27:15. I'm gonna look that up.
Then at the bottom it says, when the Almighty was still with me, when my children were about me. That's the official title. And then it says, it quotes from the book of Job, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also among them to present himself before the Lord. So, yeah, the
And according to this image, the Lord is the likeness of God that Job has created in his head.
right, the God,
Not actual,
the
it's
God of
not,
rules and the God of,
it's the God who looks like Job.
yeah,
Okay?
the strict God who wants a certain obedience and rigor and um,
Well, it's the God that you posture towards because
mhm.
you're innocent, you don't actually know anything.
Well, and that's, and to take the analogy of the little kids, like that's how little kids view their parents, because their parents are the
Right.
ones that set the rules and dish out the punishments. And then as you get older, your parents, like I'm 46, and my parents are still my parents, but I don't view them as the rule setters and those and the one that dishes out punishment anymore. Like they're they're people that have more wisdom than I, but fortunately for me, for my family, but like if I still viewed them as I did when I was 10, that would be a problem.
Yes. Yeah. And so this is when, and like he says up at the top, you shall all awake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or wake up. This as soon as he starts to awake, that's when the accuser shows up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of how we lose our imagination.
Well, I think that Job
Have
is,
you ever?
for Blake, I think Job hasn't discovered his imagination, or hasn't valued it enough, possibly from what you read earlier, that Job has put ahead of it a his piety, his obedience, his adhering to rules and things written, rather than engaging with the higher aspects in the way that he should. Like he's unbalanced maybe because the musical instruments are there, but they're hung up at the time of prayer. You know, at the end of the
Mm.
day, like it's time to put those up and to really be, you know. And I like the connection to that. If this is the image of God, eventually the accuser will show up, because the
You know,
accuser has the ability to make a accusation based on a legalistic expectation or
or
some.
just to cast doubt,
Huh?
like, or just the accuser just casts doubt on what you believe is
Yep.
true.
Yeah.
So like
Or if you've
Job,
done enough or whatever.
Job's God is Job, and it's not like Job is worshiping himself. It's that in his state of innocence, he only can perceive himself. So that's what God looks like to him. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And and then the accuser shows up and the accuser asks the question, do you really think that he's you? That he looks like that? Because now what happens next? Everything that Job loves and values, including his own values, is destroyed. Right? And the only and Job doesn't accuse Satan of destroying it. He accuses God of God is the only player in the book of Job.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no devil. He's not possessed or obsessed or oppressed or whatever you
Mm-hmm.
want to call it. So, when you have these moments as a child where you believed Santa Claus was let's just make it simple. Santa Claus was real.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden one day the accuser shows up and says, "Are you sure that's true?"
Cast doubt.
It's the casting apart,
Yeah.
right? And if you think about this as a journey into a higher level of consciousness, that's what has to happen in order to get you out of that state of innocence and on your way to
Mm-hmm.
a better understanding, right? So that God doesn't look like you. It's, Jung would call it individuation.
Right. Yeah. I also wonder if like Job made himself into the man he was because God looked like that, and so he ended up becoming like that because that's how he viewed God. Not necessarily that he became this kind of man and then he pictured God as that. But yeah, I I wonder what you think of. I'm looking at the. Well, let's just talk. So we have God up here in the image of Job. He's got his book. He's got his hand pointed down. Looks like pointed towards the gesture of the Satan. And it's I don't know. The Satan is making such a exaggerated gesture compared to everyone else. He's being very dramatic, and I wonder. He's also. I guess there's a naked guy down here, but he's also buck naked.
Oh
Um,
well, yeah. There's a lot of that in Blake's illustrations because humanity,
hmm
true humanity, is is good and beautiful to
hmm
Blake, not just in its psychology but in its actual form. So a lot of people misinterpreted Blake because it was he didn't shy away from showing a completely naked body, right?
Yeah, but I just mean sort of in contrast with the other characters in the scene.
Oh, I see.
There's like the angels have the flowing robes, and he has this. It looks like there, there's this fabric, or maybe it's even who
It's
knows.
her hair, I
It's
think.
her hair. It looks like, but it's also part of the flames. It's all sort of blending together around him, and
And I would like the author talks about the fact that the two in the back, the two ghostly faces are Job and his wife.
hmm yeah, these two
He
faces here.
he also referenced that the wife is Job's feminine side, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
she's in him. She's not
Mm-hmm.
separate from him.
Mm-hmm.
And he also referenced the book Jerusalem, the prophetic book,
Mm-hmm.
and the emanations. So in Jerusalem, the human being is separated into 8 different emanations.
Mm-hmm.
Four are feminine and four are masculine. And they are not whole. Humanity is not whole until all of those emanations can come back together into the one human being. So I'm just looking at this picture. The diabolos means to cast apart, is
Mm-hmm.
between the feminine and the masculine emanations of Job in this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And his hands are like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his legs. So he's pushing apart the masculine and feminine within Job. And what did he say about that that I read? He said, um, shadowy error of Job and his wife. Until that error is given definite form, it cannot be recognized and cast out. Um, the two dim faces beneath the arms of Satan are the shadowy error of Job and his wife. That would be
the accusation that they don't really love God? They only are serving Him in order to.
well, the error, and it's an error because this is not punitive. This is
Mm-hmm.
educational. This is developmental in its nature. This is how Blake thinks of these things. This is an evolution of, consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So the error, or we would say as Christians, the sin, which is missing the mark, which is an error. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
the The error can't be. The error here, I think, is their posturing. I like that word because
Yeah.
that's really how the first illustration appears. Everybody is posturing. What do we call it today? LARPing?
Right.
They're all LARPing. Okay? That's their error. It's that they're LARPing. Does that make more sense?
Yeah. I think that makes sense.
But it's
Um,
only they're in a state of innocence. They can't know because they don't know anything else yet.
Mm-hmm. So I want to point out there's a symbolism with the feet and hands that we're supposed to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at the feet, you'll see that like down here on Job, let me zoom in, his foot is sticking out from under his robe. So it's his left foot. And for Blake, the left foot is an error, and the right foot is taking a step, taking a proper step. So
Mm-hmm.
so Job here, by, it's almost like the angels are bringing these songs to comfort him.
Those are scrolls, right?
Yeah, there's scrolls, and then
Yeah,
he's
those are.
upholding the book.
I think those are that's what he says here when he says, um, they are Job's good deed, right? The scrolls are
Mm-hmm.
the instinctive life, Job's good deeds, which he never considered of value, but which the angels offer to God in Job's defense.
Yeah, so that's up here. We have the seven angels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there they am putting the scrolls at God's feet. Who are these guys over here? Oh, but let me just continue with the feet. You'll see that God has his right foot out. And you'll also see that Satan has his right foot out, which is kind of confusing to me.
Well, so he says this about the feet.
Where was that at? Yeah, we need to
I'll
read
just
that.
read it. Blake's symbols in illustrations of the Book of Job are simple but never obtrusive. Indeed, they were mostly overlooked until Joseph Wicksteed published his Blake's Vision of the Book of Job. Wicksteed's most important discovery was the significance of right and left symbols, fixed in our language and deep, deep in our subconscious. Who will sit at your right hand? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The right hand or foot is the good, the spiritual, and the left is the material, the legal, even the wrong. Thus, the messengers of Job's material disasters arrive left foot first. For a legal reason, Job with his left hand gives half of his last loaf to a beggar. These are in other illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
Satan's left hand pours the vial of boils. The friends arrive left foot first. Eliphaz points with his left hand to his false god. Satan's left foot shows the cloven hoof, and so forth. But when the true God descends towards man, he shows his right foot, while Job, aspiring, also shows his right foot. So
Mm-hmm.
to aspire towards something is also good, which in this case, Blake is giving him the benefit of the doubt. He's not condemning Job for his posturing or his LARPing. He's saying he's aspiring. He's trying to get there, but
Mm-hmm.
he can't know because he's in that age of innocence,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is maybe why Lucifer in this illustration is also right-footed, because he's the, you know, innocence is the I is Lucifer. It's selfhood.
Yeah. Well, if the right foot in this situation sort of means the spiritual and the left foot the material,
Legal.
and the legal, then Job here in his left foot, this is the material and the legal. Even this character, left foot. The son back here, though, we need to talk about him, though. He
Oh,
has
the
his right foot showing.
which one?
And then Satan, right foot, God, right foot. That means, but this is, and he's also pointing down, which maybe means that God is beginning his descent to
Yeah.
Job. To This is God
Def-
taking the step towards Job when Job is stuck in his legalism.
Sorry, I misstated back there. I thought Job had his right foot forward, but he
No,
has
he's
his
got his
left.
left, and
Yeah,
I
and
don't
he's got
think his
the
wife's foot is out.
no, and he's got the book of the law. His son has his instinctual scroll, right?
Mm.
And a woman with a child, and that to Blake is a good thing.
Yeah.
It's aspiring towards, right, the good,
Hmm.
something like that.
Yeah. So his son took a mistress. So that's his son and his mistress. And
And
then
their
they
baby.
have a baby. This becomes important for the next illustration. So Job has turned his back on them. And this isn't in the narrative. This is something Blake is putting in here to illustrate something. Um, we're
We
just
should
trying to.
talk about those side things too, because there's the parrot and the peacock.
Yeah. So the parrot represents the sort of the speaking without understanding, and the peacock represents
Right.
pride in it, in its own outer image. And then Job is over here on this side, and his wife over here. So they're tending this area. You can see the sleepy dog again, and the sheep within the fold. And then arising from that is this structure, which contains the parrot and the peacock, but it also goes all the way up to basically
There's
the
there's a
heavens.
pillar. Is that a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud on
Yeah, so
either
it's a
side?
pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud, and beside each one is two angels. Well, maybe there's more angels back here
Or the cherubim
that
from the
have their
ark?
heads down. And in the description, it says they're weeping, but I don't necessarily see that they're whether they're weeping or not. I see that their heads are down. They're not. They're, so they're bowing or something.
Oh, so the fire and the cloud in the illustration, because there's
Mm.
fire and cloud in the illustration too, right?
Yeah, the fire and the
Those are.
cloud.
It's like the cloud is that which obscures, and the fire is that which impassions,
Mm.
right?
And it
You
was
get that?
also what guided the Israelites through the desert.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But from a psychological point of view,
Hmm.
that's interesting too, because at the end of Job, before God's speech, he said, who is this who obscures me with what? How does that go? Something about your
Who
words of
obscures with words without knowledge?
words without knowledge. Yeah, yeah. So the at the top there, I just wanted to read you the verse. It's from
Hmm.
Psalm 17, verse 15, and it says, "As for me, I will see your face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake in your likeness." So that's interesting because in this picture, Job and God look the same. So Job, Blake is saying that you will be satisfied when you awake in God's likeness. It would be interesting to see how the illustrations progress.
Yeah, well, I mean, not to spoil it, but it should be said like when God appears in the end, he also looks like Job. So,
Okay.
so,
Okay.
and we'll talk about that because I think it's, I think it's Blake's trying to say something.
Yeah, definitely. Blake's always trying to say something.
Should
There's
we,
a lot to.
should we do one more and then call it? Have we got time for one more,
Um,
or should we just wrap it up now?
I think maybe we could wrap it up this time,
Okay,
Jess, because I gotta do some stuff.
sounds good.
But
Well, thanks for joining me, and we'll just continue next time with illustration
yeah,
3. Um, I guess if I had any, like, I'm not, I like Blake. I love the Book of Job, but some of this stuff, like the son with the mistress, the
mm,
the the way that Blake characterizes Job in the beginning, I'm not exactly like super thrilled about, but I'm here for the ride. Um, that
I don't think
this is like
I
my
actually
first impressions. I
right.
think you talking about how um, well, I mean, Job is in a state of innocence. That helps, but also that oh, what was it? It was that one thing you read towards the very beginning. That
The
uh,
prophet of Josh.
no, it was right before that.
Oh, about considering his good deeds. That part
Maybe.
when he's contrasted with the books are the scrolls, which represent the instinctive life. They are Job's good deeds, which he has never considered of value,
Oh, yeah, that's it.
but which the angels offer to God in Job's defense.
Yeah, this sort of unknowing of the good and holding on to something that you thought was good but wasn't what you were undervaluing what was truly good. Like I love that. I
Yeah,
because that's a sense in like you can hold too tightly to the things of your, let's say, childhood, and you
yeah,
try to become the perfect childhood well into your 20s or 30s, and you're like you're not supposed to be a child anymore. You're supposed to have seen another good which to hold to. And I like that whole framing of that because that and I think that's really smart.
yeah. There's also to me like there's an element of mimicry, which is kind of interesting with the peacock and the parrot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just reminded of my own childhood. Like I used to dress up in my mother's clothes and and walk around like an elegant lady,
Mm-hmm.
drink, like with alcohol. It wasn't actually alcohol, with ice cube. Because when I was a kid in the '60s and '70s, all the shows, everybody was
Yeah,
drinking. Martin was
had a
out there with his
martini and
cigarette,
yeah.
telling jokes, and you were always hearing clink, clink, clink. So I used to, my sister and I, we'd dress up, and be these elegant ladies, and we'd have drinks, and we'd make the sound of the ice cubes by banging our teeth on the glass. And guess what? My name was Kay,
Oh.
and her was Kay. We were both Kay.
That's hilarious.
That's kind of what that Blake is saying Job is doing in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
When he's sacrificing for his sons and he's following the law and he's dressing up and he's clinking the glass against his teeth,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and everybody's Kay.
Everybody's gay.
Oh, but no, truly, that's what children do. They imitate without any knowledge
Mm-hmm.
of what it is that they're doing. This is their innocence,
Yeah. So
right?
Job hasn't done anything wrong. He just hasn't latched on to the good that he needs to now.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And don't I mean maybe I don't understand the term LARPing, but isn't that what LARPing is? It's kind of like I know it has a bad connotation on the internet as somebody who's hiding behind a persona
Mm-hmm.
or a mask, but I think Jordan Peterson tried to make it acceptable when he said act as if,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you don't have any faith, that's okay. Just go to church and act as if and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that is a part of our development. Like I know for myself, becoming Orthodox, I didn't understand a lot of the things I was doing. And because of that concept, acting as if, I decided to do that and let it reveal itself to me.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what Job is doing right now. He's like a child. He's imitating, he's acting as if, he's posturing, he's doing all those things. And it's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is.
Just,
And then he has a moment where the accuser comes into his mind, right? You have to think about it in those terms, into his heaven,
mm-hmm.
and says, are you sure this is working? Do you think you're doing the right thing?
Mm-hmm.
Did
Have
you
you done
forget something?
enough?
Have you done enough? Did you forget something? And that's when like also reminded of Desmond talking about how when a child, an infant is with the mother, it doesn't know where it ends and she begins.
Mm-hmm.
They're all one thing, which is kind of, in a way, what he's illustrating when God looks like Job.
Yep, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good way to wrap it up for this time. Thanks, Shari. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me, Jess.
Yeah, let's do it again next time.